I wonder what this Battletech thing is all about.
Well,
Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. It's been a little while again. I know in the last video I talked about doing videos every couple of weeks, and that's completely fallen by the wayside. But a little bit of good news. I finally have my hobby shed finished. It's taken 2 years to get power in here. It's turned into a bit of a dumping ground. It was a bit depressing. I think I showed it to you last year. It was just piles of stuff. There's marginally less piles of stuff, and that's all behind the camera, so you don't need to worry about it. But I'm feeling kind of enthused to be working in here, having a little bit more space, a little bit more light, can leave projects set up. And sort of linked to that, I've recently not discovered Battletech. Battletech's always been on my radar, but I've certainly had an increase in interest in Battletech. For those of you who don't know, Battletech is a system from the 80s. It's not really had massive rules changes since the 80s, and it treads that line between tabletop role-playing game and tabletop war game. It's quite crunchy, I think, in terms of rules. It might not be for everyone, although there's a quick play mode that you can explore, and we'll probably have a look at that further down the line. But basically you take control of about half a dozen or so stompy robots, and you go and fight your opponent's stompy robots. The idea is that the world is sort of, or the universe it's set in is not quite post-apocalyptic, but the technology levels go up and down depending on how much they all nuke each other. It's very interesting, it's very pulpy, again, very 1980s sci-fi, Flash Gordon, that kind of thing. It's also quite reasonable to get into. I ordered the starter box, which we'll have a look at today. I think that cost me about £42, £45. I don't know what that is in freedom money, but I think maybe around about $50. I'm quite excited to give a system like this a try. I've really been looking for something to sink my teeth into that is a bit crunchier in terms of rules and detail, has quite a developed campaign system. Now all I really need to do is find people to play with. Now there's a few options to go for when you get started with Battletech. There's a beginner's box with 2 mechs and some very basic rules, but I feel like that's probably geared towards people who haven't really played any war games before. You also have the Alpha Strike box, which is a slightly larger box than this, and has a set of rules in it more geared towards larger scale quick play. So you play with a few more mechs, but the rules are a little bit more simplified. This is the Game of Armored Combat box. It's what's been recommended by various other content creators, YouTubers, as the best place to get into what's known as classic Battletech, which is what I'm most interested in. It comes with, let's have a look on the back, because I didn't make any notes because I'm not very well prepared for this one. 8 minis, so they are put together but not painted. 56-page rulebook, so not all the nitty-gritty stuff in the rulebook, but enough for you to play with everything in the box. Record sheet booklet, so I guess character sheets or war scrolls if you play Age of Sigmar, or what do they call them for 40k? Is it data slates? Data sheets? Something like that. A universe primer, so some lore. A little novella, which is pretty cool. 8 pilot cards. Color paper maps. So these are your boards. You play on something between a wargaming mat and a board game
board game board, I suppose is what you call it. You've got your hexes which you move in. Heavy stock reference sheet, paper maps, punch board for additional battle mechs and terrain, which is pretty cool. If you remember back to the old Warhammer days of having the cardboard cutouts for your big monsters and your dreadnoughts and stuff like that, it's kind of a similar idea. Lets you proxy a few things, lets you try out a few things before you buy the physical models. I'm probably not going to use those because I think the models are pretty cheap, but it's an even cheaper way to get into the game. And also, I guess, a more transportable way. And then 6-sided dice. Now, I have played a couple of games on Tabletop Simulator, and although you can just play with 2 dice, you probably want to pick up maybe sort of 15 to 20 dice in a variety of colours, because you use them for marking things like how fast your mech has travelled and various other things. So, you know, maybe the only negative I've come across so far is it doesn't quite come with enough dice to reasonably play a game. So let's get stuck in. I'm not going to do a super detailed unboxing because there's quite a few good ones on YouTube already that go through everything and probably covered by people who know more about what they're talking about. You do also get what is it? I think it's like a 20% discount voucher that I've taken out so no one steals my voucher code. You get, these are your cards for your pilot cards, and weirdly it comes with the rules to use these in Alpha Strike, which I guess is cool, so you can use them for both systems. I don't remember what came in here. I have opened this because I'm impatient, but I think that they were actually in there like that, maybe, or I can't remember. So you've got your dice, you got some cool models. We'll have a proper look at these later when I've cleared them up, but I think they look pretty good. And you get your paper maps, which fold out to be sort of A3-ish sized. And you get your quick reference sheet, which is always handy because there's quite a lot of tables. It's quite a meaty system. You get this mech recognition thing, which I think is to identify the mechs you get in the box. Kind of cool. Here we go. You got your cardboard terrain and some extra cardboard mechs. You got your record sheet, which, if anyone's played D&D before, it looks very similar to a character sheet. Why I maybe say there's kind of a hybrid between a role-playing game and a tabletop war game. We've got the primer, which has got lore and maps and all kind. Oh, let me just drop something. I should edit that out, but I won't because I'm lazy. And then we've got the rulebook here, which is pretty chunky. I think it's like 50 pages or so and covers enough to get you started with your first few games. There is a bigger hardback rulebook, but if you just want to play out the box or add a few extra mechs, this will cover you. And then finally, you've got this cool little lore novel thing, which I think GW started doing as well, or have been doing for a while, but you have to buy it, and this one comes in the starter box. So yeah, listen up, GW. This is how you do a starter box. In terms of points values and things like that, you get about 4,500. Well, sorry, 2 forces of about 4,500 BV or battle value, which is the points system for the game. So maybe roughly equivalent to about 1,500 point 40k army for each side, so 2 1,500 point 40k armies. Definitely enough to play a reasonably sized game out of the box without adding too much. And that's not including the cardboard cutouts that you get. But that's enough of me waffling on. I think you guys want to see what those models look like. So I'm going to tidy this mess up, get the models out, tidy them up, and we'll see what they look like close up.
I think for the price point, the models you get in the starter box are pretty good value. The details are pretty crisp, they feel solid and well put together, and they even come pre-assembled. As everyone who has watched my other videos will know, I do enjoy a good kit bash, but it is refreshing to just be able to open up the box and play right away. Although Battletech has 40 years of lore, with units having cool and unique colour schemes, not everyone is a big painter, and you could just spray one half the box blue, one half red, and treat it more like a board game. One thing that I did notice was that the plastic was very, very soft. Much softer than the plastic you get in 40k kits, for example. I used my trusty file to remove the mold lines, but it did damage the plastic a little bit. You probably want to use a proper mold line removal tool, or be very, very delicate with a craft knife or another sharp blade. The mold lines were quite obvious in a few places, although I believe there's a slightly newer version of this box that's just come out with redone molds. I don't know if that improves the mold line situation, but it might be worth checking out. I do have a vague plan on how I want to split these forces up and how I want to paint them, but I'll go into a bit more detail on that in my next video. However, if you are a Battletech expert, leave a comment down below if you recognize the color scheme that I'm going for. I just painted up a commando model as a test. He's just a little fella, but he will fill the scouting role quite nicely in the first force that I'm putting together. He came together quite quickly, took me about an hour or so. I used contrast to block in the colours, an all over wash of Nuln oil, and then just a few highlights to bring him back up. I used Geek Gaming Scenics, the base ready range for the base. I think this is the Taiga pot or stuff or whatever they call it, but I chucked out the packaging, so that's a problem for future me to worry about when I need to match these to something else. I finished off with a tuft and a bit of bark and painted one side of the base in bright yellow so I can tell which way he is facing in combat. All in all, I can't praise the A Game of Armoured Combat starter box enough as an entry point for new Battletech players. Offers incredible value and lets you get stuck into giant robot combat on day one. Of course, this wouldn't be a guild lore project without me massively overcommitting to something. A few friends have invited me to join a Battletech campaign, so hit that subscribe button if you want to follow my first few steps as a mercenary company commander. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you next time.